Lesson 8. Everyday therapy from the caregiver's perspective. The treatment of schizophrenia does not take place only in the psychiatrist's office or on prescription forms. Its most important part is everyday life, the ordinary, repetitive activities that a healthy person performs effortlessly, yet which can become a real challenge for someone who is ill. It is precisely in hygiene, sleep, eating, activity, and order that the person's mental state shows itself much more clearly than in conversations or declarations. That is why the caregiver needs to understand that supporting the person with everyday tasks is not helping them live, but conducting therapy, often just as important as medication. Many people in remission still struggle with negative symptoms, apathy, lack of energy, slowing down, and reduced motivation. Pharmacological treatment can also cause sleepiness, weight gain, psychomotor slowing, and sometimes problems with concentration. This means that the simplest tasks, such as bathing, changing clothes, or tidying the room, become difficult or even impossible without external support. For the caregiver, this means the need for patient, daily work, observing, gently reminding, setting rules, and helping the person regain a sense of agency. It is also important to remember that neglecting everyday activities is often the first sign of a relapse. Sudden withdrawal, lack of hygiene, chaos in the room, sleep problems, uncontrolled eating or, conversely, loss of appetite, these are often warning signals that the caregiver cannot ignore. The ability to notice these changes can allow intervention before a psychotic episode fully develops. A caregiver who can read everyday life truly protects the person's health, sometimes faster and more effectively than any medication. Personal hygiene, signs of neglect and how to respond. One of the earliest and most important indicators of stability is the person's hygiene. For most people, washing, changing clothes, or taking care of their skin are activities performed automatically. In schizophrenia it is often different. Even in remission, there may be periods of low energy, psychomotor slowing, reduced motivation, or simple confusion, which cause the person to stop taking care of their body. What the family sometimes wrongly interprets as laziness or ill will is in fact a symptom of the illness, a signal that the person needs support and reminders, and sometimes gentle step-by-step guidance. As the person closest to them, the caregiver is also the first to notice worrying signs, the smell of the skin, greasy hair, wearing the same clothes for several days, dirt accumulating under the fingernails, chafing or redness in intimate areas. Each of these signs matters because they often precede the return of psychotic symptoms or indicate increasing side effects of the medication. Ignored, they can lead to skin infections, abrasions, painful inflammation, and in overweight people, severe chafing that requires medical intervention. That is why the caregiver must react early, before the problem becomes large. Any conversation about hygiene should be conducted with great tact and calm. The person is often ashamed of their neglect, and pressure or criticism can provoke withdrawal or resistance. Instead of judging, it is better to talk in terms of facts. I've noticed your skin is a bit red. Maybe today we can take care of a shower and some fresh clothes together. Offering step-by-step help is often much more effective than leaving the person alone with a task that exceeds their current abilities. In many cases, help from the caregiver does not mean doing things for the person, but creating the conditions, preparing a towel, fresh clothes, soap, reminding them of shower time, planning it into the daily rhythm. The caregiver must also pay attention to the state of the skin, an area the person often does not monitor. Fungal infections, rashes, unpleasant odor, chafing in the groin, chafing under the breasts or in skin folds, redness in intimate areas, all of these require prompt action, often a dermatology consultation or changes to medication if the cause is excessive sweating or weight gain. In the case of nappy rash-type lesions, common in obese or less mobile people, regular care and the use of barrier creams are essential. Over time, the caregiver learns to notice patterns, for example, that worsening hygiene comes before sleeplessness, withdrawal, or irritability. These links are valuable information for the psychiatrist, so it is worth recording them in a caregiver's journal. Hygiene in schizophrenia is therefore not just about caring for the body. It is an early warning system, a diagnostic tool, and a key part of therapy. Sensitive, patient, non-judgmental help in this area not only protects the person's health, but also strengthens their sense of dignity, which the illness so often undermines. Hygiene of the surroundings, taking care of the room, bedding, and clothes. The environment in which the person lives affects their mental state just as strongly as medication. The room of someone living with schizophrenia is not just a place to rest, it is a reflection of their inner world. Mess, piles of belongings, dirty clothes scattered on the floor, open food, hoarded objects with no order. This is not just untidiness, but a sign of disorganization, slowing, and loss of control over executive functions. The person can feel overwhelmed by the task of tidying. For a healthy person, folding clothes takes a few minutes. For someone with psychotic difficulties, it can be a task requiring a huge amount of energy that is hard to find. In such situations, the caregiver should not assume ill will, but look at the environment as part of therapy. Introducing order step by step, sorting clothes together, throwing away rubbish, changing bedding, airing the room, can be not only practical help, but also a way of grounding the person again in reality. A clean, predictable space lowers anxiety and improves concentration. When hygiene of the surroundings is neglected, the caregiver should act calmly and without criticism. Excessive shame can trigger withdrawal or intensify negative symptoms. It is better to speak in concrete, neutral terms. The bedding looks like it needs changing, let's do it today, rather than accusations like, you've made a mess again. Small, realistic tasks, one a day, one a week, work well to help the person slowly regain control over their space. It does not need to be full cleaning all at once. Sometimes it is enough to tidy the desk, take out the rubbish, or change dirty bedding. The caregiver should pay particular attention to bedding and the mattress. People taking neuroleptics often sweat more, which can lead to unpleasant odor, bacterial overgrowth, and even skin problems. Regularly changing bedding, washing blankets, airing the bed, and providing the person with light, breathable nightwear are important not just for hygiene, but also for health. Neglect in this area can lead to rashes, chafing, and infections that the person may not notice or may not report. The caregiver must also assess the condition of the person's clothes. Wearing the same items for many days is common in schizophrenia and usually indicates low energy or a fading ability to plan daily tasks. Helpful support may include preparing sets of clothes for each day, separating dirty items into a laundry basket and reminding them about washing. In more pronounced cases, where the person is unable to maintain basic order, the caregiver should take over part of these duties or organize help from family or friends. Properly maintained surroundings have a huge effect on the sense of safety. For someone whose inner world is often chaotic, a clean room is like a calm island, predictable, stable, and unchanging. It is a frame that keeps them in contact with reality. That is why taking care of environmental hygiene is not a minor detail. It is a form of everyday therapy that the caregiver can implement without any special tools, using only patience, sensitivity, and understanding. Sleep, observing disturbances and correcting them. Sleep in a person living with schizophrenia is one of the most sensitive barometers of their mental state. Before delusions, voices, or intense anxiety appear, the very first sign of an approaching relapse is often insomnia or a radical change in the sleep-wake cycle. In remission, sleep is often excessive, especially in people taking strongly sedating neuroleptics. This means the caregiver must treat the person's sleep not as a private sphere into which one should not intrude, but as an important element of therapy that requires careful observation and intervention at the right time. The person may experience various sleep disturbances, difficulty falling asleep, waking during the night, a reverse day and night rhythm, excessive daytime sleepiness, or short episodes of complete insomnia. Each of these has clinical significance. Even one night of sleeplessness can increase agitation, irritability, and the tendency toward thought disorganization. A reverse sleep-wake rhythm, when the person does not sleep at night and sleeps almost all day, often indicates a slow slide into decompensation. The caregiver should pay attention to such changes and treat them as early warning signs, not as harmless episodes. Supporting sleep hygiene begins with structuring the day. If the morning is chaotic and the evening stretches far into the night, the body gradually loses its natural rhythm. The caregiver can help by introducing a predictable structure, a fixed wake-up time, morning light, daytime activities, and no stimulating activities in the evening. Regular movement, even a short daily walk, improves sleep quality and regulates hormones. It is also worth ensuring that evenings are calming, dimmed lights, no screens, a warm bath, soft music, or a shared cup of tea. The caregiver should pay particular attention to situations in which the person suddenly starts sleeping very little or, conversely, sleeps most of the day. Excessive sleepiness may be due not only to medication side effects, but also to emerging depression, which is very common in schizophrenia. Sudden insomnia, on the other hand, is one of the most serious warning signs and should prompt the caregiver to observe other symptoms and, if the situation persists, to contact the psychiatrist. Sleep is one of the pillars of stability. Its sudden disturbance indicates that the person's condition needs attention. The caregiver can also help the person cope with falling asleep through simple relaxation techniques, slow breathing, sitting quietly, listening to calming sounds of nature, or a short conversation that allows them to release the anxiety accumulated during the day. Sometimes changing the environment helps, airing the room, a warm shower, clean bedding. These seemingly small actions can have a surprisingly strong effect. In schizophrenia, sleep is both a symptom and a medicine. Its lack can lead to worsening, and its presence, to stabilization. A caregiver who knows how to observe the person's sleep pattern and respond to disturbances gains one of the most powerful tools for preventing relapses. Eating, appetite, overeating, and malnutrition. Appetite in schizophrenia is an area that can be extremely challenging for the caregiver. Eating disturbances appear both in the acute phase and in remission, and their nature can change radically. The person may eat almost nothing for an extended period, then, after starting medication, begin compulsive overeating, especially sweets, bread, and fatty foods. This contrast is not a whim or a sign of ill will. It is the result of psychopathology and medication effects that influence metabolism, satiety regulation, gut motility, and hormonal balance. The caregiver must be prepared for such fluctuations and observe them carefully, because eating is one of the components of therapy. During periods of intense negative symptoms, the person may feel indifferent to food, forget meals, or even be afraid to eat if there is anxiety in the background. Undereating leads to weakness, dehydration, vitamin deficiencies, and loss of muscle mass, which further worsen energy and motivation. The caregiver should then respond patiently, offering small meals at fixed times and making sure that there are easy-to-heat or easy-to-prepare dishes at home that the person likes and accepts. Gentle encouragement is important, not pressure. Pushing too hard may increase anxiety and resistance. The situation looks very different after introducing second-generation neuroleptics, such as olanzapine or quetiapine, which in many patients cause a sudden increase in appetite, especially for high-calorie, carbohydrate-rich foods. The person may eat without feeling full, search for food at night, snack in secret, and even hoard food in their room. For the caregiver, this is often a shock. Someone who previously ate very little suddenly starts gaining several kilos a month. This is not a choice but a pharmacological effect. The caregiver's role is not criticism, but creating a healthy, realistic eating structure, 3 regular meals a day, availability of fruit and vegetables, limiting sweets at home, introducing light dinners, and ensuring water is always within reach. An important task for the caregiver is also monitoring hydration. People with cognitive difficulties often drink too little, especially on hot days or when breathing is faster due to anxiety. Symptoms of dehydration can easily be mistaken for worsening psychosis, confusion, dry skin, slowing, or agitation. That is why encouraging regular fluid intake is crucial, ideally by setting fixed times for drinks. With significant weight gain, the caregiver should consider consulting a dietitian. Overweight in schizophrenia is not just an aesthetic issue, it increases the risk of type 2 diabetes, heart disease, high blood pressure, and joint problems. A dietitian can help design a meal plan tailored to the person's abilities, based on simple dishes that do not require complicated preparation. Eating is not only a physical need, it is also part of mood regulation. Disturbed appetite can destabilize the person's day, and severe hunger as well as overeating can affect concentration, mood, and anxiety levels. A caregiver who can observe eating patterns, respond to them, and gently introduce structure creates conditions for the person to regain balance. In everyday care around meals, it is not only calories that matter, it is the sense of safety, regularity, and care that are just as therapeutic as the medication. Physical activity. Movement is one of the most effective and at the same time simplest therapeutic tools in schizophrenia. It does not require special skills, does not overload the person with excessive stimuli, and its effects cover many areas at once. It improves mood, increases blood flow in the brain, regulates sleep, reduces muscle tension, lowers anxiety, and helps to cope with negative symptoms such as apathy, slowing, or social withdrawal. For the caregiver, this means that the person's daily physical activity should not be treated as an extra, but as a part of therapy with real clinical importance. Many people living with schizophrenia find it difficult to motivate themselves to move, especially in the first months of remission, when the medication slows the body down, causes sleepiness, or increases body weight. The caregiver should not interpret this as laziness. It is the result of how the illness affects will and agency. This is why it is often the caregiver who gently but consistently helps the person come out of apathy. It is best to start with very small things: 10 minutes of walking around the house, a walk to the shop and back, a few simple stretches in the morning. Regularity is more important than intensity. A short walk every day is better than an ambitious workout once a month. Movement is particularly important in easing extrapyramidal symptoms caused by neuroleptics, such as muscle stiffness, motor slowing, tremors, clumsiness, or the feeling that the limbs are heavy. The caregiver should know that moderate activity, especially in the form of walks, gentle stretching, swimming, using a stationary bike, or simple breathing exercises, often brings clear relief. Movement increases muscle flexibility and improves coordination, which reduces discomfort and helps the person regain confidence. Physical activity also plays a huge role in managing body weight, which in many people rises sharply after starting neuroleptics. Excess weight is not just an aesthetic problem, it leads to knee pain, strain on the heart, metabolic changes, sleep apnea, and reduced self-esteem. Every step taken each day, every simple activity helps slow this process and protects the person against serious health complications. The caregiver can support them in choosing activities that are pleasant and feel natural, walking together at the same time each day, light household chores, exercising to music, morning stretching. It is worth emphasizing that physical activity also affects the mind. In schizophrenia, negative symptoms, indifference, lack of energy, difficulty initiating action, are often more destructive than the delusions themselves. Movement increases the production of endorphins, improves blood flow in the brain, and helps break through the state of mental standstill. Even if the person protests at first, after a few minutes they often feel better, their body awakes up and their thoughts feel less heavy. The caregiver should observe how the person responds to different forms of activity and avoid excessive pressure. The goal is not athletic performance, but better functioning, symptom reduction, and building a daily rhythm. If the person is physically weakened or has other medical conditions, it is worth consulting a physiotherapist who can select exercises that are safe and tailored to their abilities. Even people with limited mobility can do seated, breathing, or isometric exercises. Social activity. Isolation is one of the quietest and at the same time most dangerous enemies of a person living with schizophrenia. After a psychotic episode, many people withdraw from social contact, either they feel ashamed, insecure, lost, and sometimes convinced that others are watching them, judging them, or are hostile. Negative symptoms, such as apathy, loss of spontaneity, and slowing, only deepen this withdrawal. From the person's perspective, isolation can feel like a safe place, yet for the caregiver it must be a warning sign. A lack of contact with people accelerates relapses, deepens depression, and makes returning to normal life much more difficult. The caregiver should gently but consistently counteract isolation. The aim is not to force the person into a busy social life, but to create small, safe spaces of contact that do not overload the mind. For one person it may be a shared walk at a quiet time of day. For another, a short visit to a trusted family member. Someone else may benefit from taking part in a small support group where they meet people with similar experiences and do not feel misunderstood. The most important thing is that the contacts are predictable, short, and gradually increased, without pressure and without expectations. In many cases, the person needs the caregiver to help open the door to the world. This might be going shopping together, attending a doctor's appointment, dealing with a simple matter at an office, or even just a brief step outside for fresh air. Each such action is a symbolic confirmation that they are still part of society, not a prisoner of the home and their fears. These small activities build a sense of presence and agency, which is often lost in schizophrenia. The caregiver must also stay alert to dangerous social relationships. People with schizophrenia can be vulnerable to manipulation and may trust the wrong people, who exploit them financially, emotionally, or psychologically. Sometimes it is necessary to limit contact with false friends, people who abuse alcohol or drugs, or those who trigger fear and disorganization in the person. Protecting them from a toxic environment is just as important as encouraging healthy relationships. It is worth remembering that for many people the best place for a first social step is group therapy or a support group. There, the atmosphere is understanding, non-judgmental, and shaped by a sense of shared journey. The person can see that they are not alone, that others struggle with similar issues, and at the same time manage to function. This gives hope and motivation. A caregiver who encourages participation in such a group often opens the door to a new stage of recovery. Not everywhere are there support groups dedicated specifically to schizophrenia. Getting to weekly meetings held in distant locations may be too difficult and too costly for the caregiver. At the same time, group-based social rehabilitation for mental health problems is also offered for people with addictions, depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, and so on. 12-step therapy, used in AA groups, can also work for a person with schizophrenia, perhaps in a different way, but where there are no local groups focused strictly on psychosis, it is an alternative worth considering. In some places there are day centers and day care facilities where psychologists or volunteers help activate social life. Many NGOs open their doors to people with mental illnesses. Offering volunteer work at cultural events, helping prepare a hall, hand out flyers or invitations, or taking on one of the activities, for example, face painting for children at outdoor events, can have remarkable therapeutic effects. It also creates a new network of acquaintances and connections with people who are usually very understanding and warm-hearted. From a Buddhist perspective, creating good karma resolves many worldly problems. Helping others generates a strong stream of well-being that flows back to the helper. The world of good deeds has its own currency, which can be used to pay for the misfortunes that befall us in life. Being useful to others, even when it is not linked to direct financial reward, will not go unnoticed. Karma is a currency just like the US dollar or the British pound, only it operates in the sphere of spirituality. A socially engaged person earns, even when working for free. It does not really matter whether you believe in Buddhist karma as a natural law or not. It is a mental construct that helps when you use it as a tool. In charitable work, the idea of karma acts as an inner compass that organizes motivations and gives meaning to actions. It is not about metaphysical bookkeeping, but about a simple relationship. Every action leaves a trace in the mind, shaping character and the way we respond to the world. Helping others thus becomes a practice of purifying one's own intentions. A person who helps out of the heart strengthens a calm, clear attitude. Someone who acts for recognition or gain reinforces tension and expectation. In this view, karma does not judge but shows direction. It indicates that help given with the right intention transforms both the recipient and the giver, creating a space where well-being becomes a shared consequence, not a transaction. Social activity does not need to be especially intense or frequent. In schizophrenia, the goal is rather that the person does not disappear from the world, does not shut themselves away in their room, and does not lose the ability to manage simple interactions. Your role as a caregiver is to help them find the right balance, just enough contact as they can handle, and enough support as they need to slowly return to people without fear. In a world that, after a psychotic episode, may feel alien, the caregiver becomes a guide who teaches the person anew that other people are not a threat, but often precisely the path back to a more normal life. Responsibilities and daily structure. For someone living with schizophrenia, everyday life often feels like a landscape after a storm. Things that once were obvious suddenly become demanding, and simple tasks can trigger tension and anxiety. That's why one of the caregiver's most important tasks is to create a stable, predictable daily structure for the person. This is not about control, but about providing a framework within which the mind can calm down and behavior can start to become more organized. After a psychotic episode, many executive functions, planning, initiating actions, maintaining attention, are weakened. The person may struggle to get themselves together even for the simplest activities, getting dressed, washing, tidying their room, or preparing a basic meal. For a healthy person, these are small things. For someone with schizophrenia, they can be an insurmountable barrier, especially during depressive periods or under the influence of strong neuroleptics. A caregiver who understands this does not see the lack of activity as laziness, but as a symptom of the illness. This is crucial, because criticism and pressure usually make the person worse. They lead to withdrawal, tears, guilt, or defensive rebellion. The daily structure should be like a map, clear, simple, and repetitive. Plans work best when described in very concrete terms: waking up at the same time, washing, breakfast, a light household task, a short walk, rest, meals at regular hours. This repetition builds a sense of safety and gives the person a signal that the world is not chaotic or threatening. It is helpful to keep a daily plan in which, in the evening, the person writes out a schedule for the following day. This is a very important therapeutic tool, already mentioned in the section for the person with schizophrenia. It helps stabilize the daily rhythm and make it predictable. The caregiver's role is to ensure that such a plan is made every evening at roughly the same time. The person may find it very hard to create it, so at the beginning it is worth helping them. The plan should include specific times for each activity, for example, waking at 8 in the morning, or within a set window, which includes personal hygiene, then preparing and eating breakfast 9 to 9:30 a.m., a walk 11 to 11:30 a.m., preparing and eating lunch 11:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. Ideally, the entire day is written out, with any gaps marked as free time. During the day, the caregiver needs to supervise the person, reminding them of the scheduled activities. When they manage to complete the plan independently or with only minor help, they can be symbolically rewarded with a piece of cake, a specially prepared dinner, or an ice cream sundae. Embedding routine in the person's mind not only has enormous therapeutic value, it also naturally makes later caregiving easier, because the person gradually becomes more able to look after themselves. Routine is one of the most effective ways of dealing with the consequences of memory impairment. It produces remarkable results in people with alcohol dependence, whose years of heavy drinking have permanently damaged the brain's grey matter. Memory problems in schizophrenia are of a different nature. The illness most often disrupts memory only temporarily. Routine helps overcome this discomfort more quickly. In difficult cases, where the illness has left a strong mark on the person, the caregiver can simplify tasks by breaking them down into very small steps. Instead of saying clean your room, it is better to say put your clothes on the shelf, and only then take out the trash, make the bed. For the person, this is a huge difference. Large tasks can be overwhelming, small ones are achievable. The same applies to organizing household responsibilities. The person can be responsible for one simple task, taking out the rubbish, washing a few dishes, watering the plants. It is important to remember that expectations which are too extensive lead to frustration and conflict. In remission, the person may look normal, speak logically, and seem like a fully healthy individual, but this is an illusion that often misleads caregivers. Internally, they are still struggling with deficits in concentration, working memory, and motivation, and their psychological energy is limited. For this reason, responsibilities must be tailored to the person's actual capacity, not to other people's ideas of what they should be able to do. In clinical practice, such a realistic approach significantly reduces the risk of relapse. Daily structure has another dimension as well. It organizes emotions. Predictability and repetition lower anxiety, stabilize mood, and provide a sense of having some control over one's life, even if the steps are small. For the person, these small successes are a huge source of strength, because each completed task reinforces the belief, I can do this, even if it was just making a cup of tea. A caregiver who helps the person build such an everyday life is laying the foundation for lasting remission. The daily rhythm is one of the most effective stabilizing tools in schizophrenia, simple, but extremely powerful. In the chaos of this illness, structure is like a lighthouse. It does not solve every problem, but it keeps you from getting lost. Summary: creating a stable daily structure for the person is one of the caregiver's most important responsibilities, and at the same time one of the hardest. Schizophrenia disrupts planning, motivation, the assessment of one's own abilities, and the capacity to start even the simplest tasks. This is why the person often cannot organize their day on their own, and responsibilities that are routine for a healthy person can be an insurmountable barrier for them. It is the caregiver who helps build a daily rhythm that soothes a racing mind, lowers anxiety, and provides a sense of safety. Simple, repetitive activities, hygiene, meals, small chores, movement, moments of rest become therapeutic tools just as important as medication. By introducing such structure, the caregiver not only supports the person's emotional stabilization, but also protects them from the chaos that so often leads to relapse. Most importantly, responsibilities must match the person's real capacities, not an idealized image of how they should function. Small steps are huge steps in schizophrenia. Patient companionship, breaking tasks down into simple components, and consistently, kindly maintaining the daily rhythm brings far more benefit than pressure, criticism, or expectations beyond the person's strength. A caregiver who understands this dynamic becomes a stable pillar in the person's life, someone who helps them return to balance every single day. And in schizophrenia, it is precisely everyday life that becomes the most effective form of therapy.